Hello everyone and welcome to episode 2 of my Dwarf Paladin Hardcore mini-series in World of Warcraft Classic, where we of course are playing Hardcore, where this is a special game mode in World of Warcraft Classic where we only have one life, where if you die from any means we are permanently dead forever, so we need to be careful while we adventure today in Dun Morogh, or I used to always pronounce it Dun Morogh for whatever reason. But today, while I explore this map, and at the end of this episode I want to explore the dwarven capital city of Ironforge, I want to go ahead and do something that I've been wanting to do in my World of Warcraft Let's Play, like all my different Let's Play series combined, which is going through a really cool document that has existed in the World of Warcraft community for a while, that was created by a great person. Just great in the context that they made this document, because it's a really good resource, and I'm sure most people who have been playing World of Warcraft for a while has seen this document. But basically it is a combination put together of every single lore book available in World of Warcraft Classic in chronological order. So we have all these different books around the world that we could read, which I've mostly been skipping in my Let's Play series, but I want to go ahead and just read through them today through this resource, which I will link down in the description. Where alongside that there is some other lore in this document that we could read through if you wanted to, but I think we mostly talked about it in our different episodes across all my different World of Warcraft Let's Play series, so I'm mostly just going to be sticking to the lore books. Where alongside that, I'm not going to be able to get through them all in this episode, so I'll probably continue into the next episode, and maybe even into my Season of Discovery series if I can't finish this or if we die too quickly. So, starting in Chapter 1, Mythos, the mythology of the Titans. The Titans and the shaping of the universe from about 10,001 more years ago, where this is a quest item located inside of the Scarlet Monastery. No one knows exactly how the universe began. Some theorize that a catastrophic cosmic explosion sent the infinite worlds spinning out into the vastness of the Great Dark, worlds that would one day bear life forms of wondrous and terrible diversity. Others believe that the universe, as it exists, was created as a whole by a singular, all-powerful entity. Though the exact origins of the chaotic universe remain unclear, it is clear that a race of powerful beings arose to bring order to the various worlds and ensure a safe future for the beings that would follow in their footsteps. The Titans, colossal, metallic-skinned gods from the far reaches of the cosmos, came forward and set to work on the worlds they encountered. They shaped the form of their worlds by raising mighty mountains and dredging out vast seas. They breathed skies and raging atmospheres into being, all part of their unfathomable, far-sighted plan to create order out of chaos. They even empowered primitive races to tend to their works and maintain the integrity of their respective worlds. The Titans, ruled by an elite sect known as the Pantheon, brought order to 100 million worlds scattered throughout the Great Dark Beyond during the first ages of creation. The benevolent Pantheon, seeking to safeguard their structured worlds, was ever vigilant against the threat of attack from the vile, extra-dimensional entities of the Twisty Nether. The Nether, an ethereal dimension of chaotic magics that connected the myriad of worlds of the universe together, was home to an infinite number of malefic, demonic beings who sought only to destroy life and devour the energies of the living universe. Sargeras and the Betrayal, from about 10,001 plus years ago, where this is a lore book found in the Barrens, Arathi Highlands, Scholomance, and Ashenvale. Over time, demonic entities made their way into the Titans' worlds from the Twisty Nether, and the Pantheon elected its greatest warrior, Sargeras, to act as its first line of defense. A noble giant of molten bronze, Sargeras carried out his duties for countless millennia, seeking out and destroying these demons wherever he could find them. Over the eons, Sargeras encountered two powerful demonic races, both of which were bent on gaining power and dominance over the physical universe. The Eridar, an insidious race of devilish sorcerers, used their warlock magics to invade and enslave a number of worlds. The indigenous races of those worlds were mutated by the Eridar's malevolent powers and turned into demons themselves. Though Sargeras' nearly limitless powers were more than enough to defeat the vile Eridar, he was greatly troubled by the creature's corruption and all-consuming evil. Incapable of fathoming such depravity, the Great Titan began to slip into a brooding depression. Despite his growing unease, Sargeras rid the universe of the warlocks by trapping them within a corner of the Twisty Nether. While his confusion and misery deepened, Sargeras was forced to contend with another group intent on disrupting the Titan's order, the Nathrazim. This dark race of vampiric demons, also known as Dreadlords, also known as retconned and Shadowlands, conquered a number of populated worlds by possessing their inhabitants and turning them to the shadow. The nefarious, scheming Dreadlords turned whole nations against one another by manipulating them into unthinking hatred and mistrust. Sargeras defeated the Nathrazim easily, but their corruption affected him deeply. As doubt and despair overwhelmed Sargeras' senses, he lost all faith not only in his mission, but also in the Titan's vision of an ordered universe. Eventually, he came to believe that the concept of order itself was folly, and that chaos and depravity were the only absolutes within the dark, lonely universe. His fellow Titans tried to persuade him of his error and calm his raging emotions, but he disregarded their more optimistic beliefs as self-serving delusions. Storming from the ranks forever, Sargeras set out to find his own place in the universe. Although the Pantheon was sorrowful at his departure, the Titans could never have predicted just how far their lost brother would go. By the time of Sargeras' madness had consumed the last vestiges of his valiant spirit, he believed that the Titans themselves were responsible for creation's failure. Deciding, at last, to undo their works throughout the universe, he resolved to form an unstoppable army that would set the physical universe aflame. Even Sargeras' titanic form became distorted from the corruption that plagued his once noble heart. His eyes, hair, and beard erupted in fire, and his metallic brown skin split open to reveal an endless furnace of blistering hate. In his fury, Sargeras shattered the prisons of the Eredar and the Nathrazim and set the loathsome demons free. These cunning creatures bowed before the Dark Titan's vast rage and offered to serve him in whatever malicious ways they could. From the ranks of the powerful Eredar, Sargeras picked 2 champions to command his demonic army of destruction. Kil'jaeden the Deceiver was chosen to seek out the darkest races in the universe and recruit them into Sargeras' ranks. The second champion, Archimonde the Defiler, was chosen to lead Sargeras' vast armies into battle against any who might resist the Titan's will. Kil'jaeden's first move was to enslave the vampiric Dreadlords under his terrible power. The Dreadlords served as his personal agents throughout the universe, and they took pleasure in locating primitive races for their master to corrupt and bring into the fold. First amongst the Dreadlords was Tichondrius the Darkener. Tichondrius served Kil'jaeden as the perfect soldier and agreed to bring Sargeras' burning will to all the dark corners of the universe. The mighty Archimonde also empowered agents of his own, calling upon the malefic pit lords and their barbarous leader Manoroth the Destructor. Archimonde hoped to establish a fighting elite that would scour creation of all life. Once Sargeras saw that his armies were amassed and ready to follow his every command, he launched his raging forces into the vastness of the Great Dark. He referred to his growing army as the Burning Legion. To this date, it is still unclear how many worlds they consumed and burned on their unholy burning crusade across the universe. The Old Gods and the Ordering of Azeroth, from about 10,001 plus years ago, which is a lore book located in Ironforge, Wetlands, Skullaments, Blackrock Depths, Undercity, and Darnassus. Unaware of Sargeras' mission to undo their countless works, the Titans continued to move from world to world, shaping and ordering each planet as they saw fit. Along their journey, they happened upon a small world that its inhabitants would later name Azeroth. As the Titans made their way across the primordial landscape, they encountered a number of hostile elemental beings. These elementals, who worshipped a race of unfathomably evil beings known as the Old Gods, vowed to drive the Titans back and keep their world inviolate from the invaders' metallic touch. The Pantheon, disturbed by the Old Gods' penchant for evil, waged war upon the elementals and their dark masters. The Old Gods' armies were led by the most powerful elemental lieutenants, Ragnaros the Fire Lord, Therazane the Stone Mother, Alakir the Wind Lord, and Neptulon the Tide Hunter. Their chaotic forces raged across the face of the world and clashed with the colossal Titans. Though the elementals were powerful beyond mortal comprehension, their combined forces could not stop the mighty Titans. One by one, the elemental lords fell, and their forces dispersed. The Pantheon shattered the Old Gods' citadels and chained the 5 evil gods far beneath the surface of the world. Without the Old Gods' powers to keep their raging spirits bound to the physical world, the elementals were banished to an abyssal plane, where they would contend with one another for all eternity. With the elementals' departure, nature calmed, and the world settled into a peaceful harmony. The Titans saw that the threat was contained, had set to work. The Titans empowered a number of races to help them fashion the world, to help them carve out the fathomless caverns beneath the earth. The Titans created the dwarf-like earthen from magical living stone. To help them dredge out the seas and lift land from the seafloor, the Titans created the immense but gentle sea giants. For many ages, the Titans moved and shaped the earth until at last there remained one perfect continent. At the continent's center, the Titans crafted a lake of scintillating energies. The lake, which they named the Well of Eternity, was to be the fount of life for the world. Its potent energies would nurture the bones of the world and empower life to take root in the land's rich soil. Over time, plants, trees, monsters, and creatures of every kind began to thrive on the primordial continent. As twilight fell on the final day of their labors, the Titans named the continent Kalimdor, Land of Eternal Starlight. Charge of the Dragonflights from about 10,001 plus years ago. A lore book located in Ironforge, Wetlands, the Barrens, Terrasfog Glades, and Ashenvale. Satisfied that the small world had been ordered and that their work was done, the Titans prepared to leave Azeroth. However, before they departed, they charged the greatest species of the world with the task of watching over Kalimdor, lest any force should threaten its perfect tranquility. In that age, there were many dragonflights, yet there were 5 flights that held dominion over their brethren. It was these 5 flights that the Titans chose to shepherd the budding world. The greatest members of the Pantheon imbued a portion of their power upon each of the flight's leaders. These majestic dragons, as listed below, became known as the Great Aspects, or the Dragon Aspects. Amon'Thul, the High Father of the Pantheon, bestowed a portion of his cosmic power upon the massive bronze dragon, Nosdormu. The High Father empowered Nosdormu to guard time itself and police the ever-spinning pathways of fate and destiny. The stoic, honorable Nosdormu became known as the Timeless One. Eonar, the Titan patron of all life, gave a portion of her power to the Red Leviathan Alexstrasza. Even after, Alexstrasza would be known as the Lifebinder, and she would work to safeguard all living creatures within the world. Due to her supreme wisdom and limitless compassion for all living things, Alexstrasza was crowned the Dragon Queen and given dominion over her kind. Eonar also blessed Alexstrasza's younger sister, the lithe green dragon Ysera, with a portion of nature's influence. Ysera fell into an eternal trance, bound to the waking dream of creation. Known as a dreamer, she would watch over the growing wilds of the world from her verdant realm, the Emerald Dream. Norgannon, the Titan Lord Keeper and Master Magician, granted the blue dragon Malygos a portion of his vast power. From then on, Malygos would be known as the Spellweaver, the Guardian of Magic, and Hidden Arcanum. Khaz'goroth, the Titan Shaper and Forger of the World, bestowed some of his vast power upon the mighty black worm, Neltharion. The great-hearted Neltharion, known afterwards as the Earth Warder, was given dominion over the earth and the deep places of the world. He embodied the strength of the world and served as Alexstrasza's greatest supporter. Thus empowered, the 5 aspects are charged with the world's defense in the Titans' absence. With the dragons prepared to safeguard their creation, the Titans left Azeroth behind forever. Unfortunately, it was only a matter of time before Sargeras learned of the newborn world's existence. The Twin Empires, from about 10,001 plus years ago, found in Sturgothorn Vale and Tenaris. About 16,000 years ago, long before the Night Elves foolishly called down the wrath of the Burning Legion, trolls lorded over much of Kalimdor, then a single continent. There were twin troll empires, the Gurubashi Empire of the southeastern jungle, and the Amani Empire of the middle forest lands. There were smaller tribes that lived far to the north, in the region now known as Northrend. These tribes founded a small nation known as Gundrak, but never achieved the size or prosperity of the southern empires. The Gurubashi and Amani empires had little love for one another, but rarely warred against each other. At the time, their greatest common enemy was a third empire, the civilization of Aj-Akir. The Akir were intelligent insectoids who ruled the lands of the far west. These clever insectoids were greatly expansionistic and incredibly evil. The Akir were obsessed with eradicating all non-insect life from the fields of Kalimdor. The trolls fought them for many thousands of years, but never succeeded in winning a true victory over the Akir. Eventually, due to the trolls' persistence, the Akiri kingdom split in half as its citizens fled to separate colonies in the far northern and southern regions of the continent. 2 Akiri city-states emerged, Ejol Nerub in the northern wastes, and Ahn'Qiraj in the southern desert. Though the Trolls suspected that there were other Akiri colonies beneath Kalimdor, their existence was never verified. With the insectoids driven into exile, the twin Troll empires returned to business as usual. Despite their great victory, neither civilization expanded much farther than their original boundaries. However, ancient texts speak of a small faction of Trolls that broke off from the Amani Empire and founded their own colony in the heart of the Dark Continent. There, these brave pioneers discovered the cosmic well of eternity, which transformed them into beings of immense power. Some legends suggest that these adventurous Trolls were the first Night Elves, though this theory has never been proven. The Kaldorei and the Well of Eternity, the Waking World and the Well of Eternity from about 10,001 plus years ago, located in Stormwind City and the Wetlands. 10,000 years before the orcs and humans clashed in their first war, the world of Azeroth cradled only one massive continent, surrounded by the infinite raging seas. That landmass, known as Kalimdor, was home to a number of disparate races and creatures, all vying for survival amongst the savage elements of the waking world. At the Dark Continent's center was a mysterious lake of incandescent energies. The lake, which would later be called the Well of Eternity, was the true heart of the world's magic and natural power. Drawing its energies from the infinite great dark beyond the world, the well acted as a mystical fount, sending its potent energies out across the world to nourish life in all of its wondrous forms. In time, a primitive tribe of nocturnal humanoids cautiously made their way to the edges of the mesmerizing enchanted lake. The feral, nomadic humanoids, drawn by the well's strange energies, built crude homes upon its tranquil shores. Over time, the well's cosmic powers affected the strange tribe, making them strong, wise, and virtually immortal. The tribe adopted the name Kaldorei, which meant children of the stars in their native tongue. To celebrate their budding society, they constructed great structures and temples along the lake's periphery. The Kaldorei, or Night Elves as they would later be known, worshipped the moon goddess Elune and believed that she slept within the well's shimmering depths during the daylight hours. The early Night Elf priests and seers studied the well with an insatiable curiosity, driven to plume its untold secrets and power. As their society grew, the Night Elves explored the breadth of Kalimdor and encountered its myriad of denizens. The only creatures that gave them pause were the ancient and powerful dragons. Though the great serpentine beasts were often reclusive, they did much to safeguard the No Lands from potential threats. The Night Elves believed that the dragons held themselves to be the protectors of the world, and that they and their secrets were best left alone. In time, the Night Elves' curiosity led them to meet and befriend a number of powerful entities, not the least of which was Cenarius, a mighty demigod of the primordial forest lands. The great-hearted Cenarius grew fond of the inquisitive Night Elves and spent a great deal of time teaching them about the natural world. The tranquil Kaldorei developed a strong empathy for the living forests of Kalimdor and reveled in the harmonious balance of nature. Yet, as the seemingly endless ages passed, the Night Elves' civilization expanded both territorially and culturally. Their temples, worlds, and dwelling places stretched across the breadth of the Dark Continent. Azshara, the Night Elves' beautiful and gifted queen, built an immense, wondrous palace on the well's shores that housed her favorite servitors within its bejeweled halls. Her servitors, whom she called the Kaldorei or Highborn, doted on her every command and believed themselves to be greater than the rest of their lower caste brethren. Though Queen Azshara was loved equally by all of her people, the Highborn were secretly hated by the jealous masses. Sharing the priest's curiosity towards the Well of Eternity, Azshara ordered the educated Highborn to plume its secrets and reveal its true purpose in the world. The Highborn buried themselves in their work and studied the well ceaselessly. In time, they developed the ability to manipulate and control the well's cosmic energies. As their reckless experiments progressed, the Highborn found that they could use their newfound powers to either create or destroy at their leisure. The hapless Highborn had stumbled upon primitive magic and were now resolved to devote themselves to its mastery. Although they agreed that magic was inherently dangerous if handled irresponsibly, Azshara and her Highborn began to practice their spellcraft with reckless abandon. Cenarius and many of the wizened Night Elf scholars warned that only calamity would result from toying with the clearly volatile arts of magic, but Azshara and her followers stubbornly continued to expand their burgeoning powers. As their powers grew, a distinct change came over Azshara and the Highborn. The haughty, aloof upper class became increasingly callous and cruel towards their fellow Night Elves. A dark, brooding pall veiled Azshara's once entrancing beauty. She began to withdraw from her loving subjects and refused to interact with any but her trusted Highborn priests. a young, brazen scholar named Furion Stormrage, who had spent much of his time studying the will's effects, began to suspect that a terrible power was corrupting the Highborn and his beloved queen. Though he could not conceive the evil that was to come, he knew that the Night Elves' lives would soon be changed forever. Empires fall from about 10,001 plus years ago, located in Stranglethorn Vale and Tenaris. Aside from their shadowy origins, it is clear that the Night Elves came to power soon after the discovery of the Well of Eternity. Despite the Trolls' attempts to keep them from expanding their territories, the Night Elves built up a mighty empire that expanded rapidly across primordial Kalimdor. Wielding fierce magics never before imagined by the superstitious Trolls, the Night Elves had little trouble doing what the evil Akir could never do, topple the two greatest empires in the world. The Night Elves systematically dismantled the Trolls' defenses and supply chains. The Trolls, unable to counter the Elves' destructive magics, buckled under the onslaught. The Night Elves proved to every bit as cunning and bloodthirsty as the savage Trolls, incurring the latter race's eternal hatred and disdain. The Gurubashi and Amani empires fragmented within only a few short years. Eventually, the Night Elves were burned by the arcane fires they had sought to control. Their reckless use of magic had lured the demonic Burning Legion to the world. The demons crushed much of the Night Elf civilization, though there are no records to indicate that the Legion attacked either Troll civilization. It is likely that battles took place across the breadth of the continent. At the end of this terrible conflict, known as the War of the Ancients, the Well of Eternity imploded. The resulting shockwave shattered the greater landmass of Kalimdor. The center of the continent was blasted beneath the sea, leaving only a small group of broken, single continents. Thus, great chunks of the Amani and Gurubashi empires still exist in the present lands of Quel'Thalas and Stranglethorn respectively. The Ajakir kingdoms of Azul-Nerub and Ahn'Qiraj have also survived in present-day Northrend and Tenaris respectively. Both Troll civilizations recoiled from the vast destruction of the primordial world they had known. The dauntless Trolls rebuilt the ravaged cities and set about to reclaim their former power. The War of the Ancients from 10,000 years ago. Stormwind City, Scarlet Monastery, and Darnassus. The Highborn's reckless use of magic sent ripples of energy spiraling out from the Well of Eternity and into the Great Dark beyond. The streaming ripples of energy were felt by terrible alien minds. Sargeras, the great enemy of all life, the destroyer of worlds, felt the potent ripples and was drawn to their distant point of origin. Spying the primordial world of Azeroth and sensing the limitless energies of the Well of Eternity, Sargeras was consumed by an insatiable hunger. The great dark god of the nameless void resolved to destroy the fledgling world and claim its energies as his own. Sargeras gathered his vast burning legion and made his way towards the unsuspecting world of Azeroth. The legion was comprised of 1,000,000 screaming demons, all ripped from the far corners of the universe, and the demons hungered for conquest. Sargeras' lieutenants, Archimonde the Defiler and Manroth the Destructor, prepared their infernal minions to strike. Queen Najara, overwhelmed by the terrible ecstasy of her power, fell victim to Sargeras' undeniable power and agreed to grant him entrance to her world. Even the highborn servitors gave themselves over to magic's inevitable corruption and began to worship Sargeras as their god. To show their allegiance to the Legion, the highborn aided their queen in opening a vast, swirling portal within the depths of the Well of Eternity. Once all his preparations had been made, Sargeras began his catastrophic invasion of Azeroth. The warrior demons of the Burning Legion stormed into the world through the Well of Eternity and laid siege to the Night Elves' sleeping cities. Led by Archimonde and Manroth, the Legion swarmed over the lands of Kalimdor, leaving only ash and sorrow in its wake. The demon warlocks called down searing infernos that crashed like hellish meteors into the graceful spires of Kalimdor's temples. A band of burning, bloodletting killers known as the Doomguard marched across Kalimdor's fields, slaughtering everyone in their path. Packs of wild, demonic fellhounds ravaged the countryside unopposed. Though the brave Kaldori warriors rushed to defend their ancient homeland, they were forced to give ground, inch by inch, until the fury of the Legion's onslaught. It fell to Malfurion Stormrage to find help for his beleaguered people. Stormrage, whose own brother Illidan practiced the Highborn's magic, was incensed by the growing corruption amongst the upper class. Convincing Illidan to forsake his dangerous obsession, Malfurion set out to find Cenarius and muster a resistance force. The beautiful young priestess Tyrande agreed to accompany the brothers in the name of Elune. Though Malfurion and Illidan shared a love for the idealistic priestess, Tyrande's heart belonged to Malfurion alone. Illidan resented his brother's budding romance with Tyrande, but knew that his heartache was nothing compared to the pain of his magical addiction. Illidan, who had grown dependent on magic's empowering energies, struggled to keep control of his nearly overwhelming hunger to tap the will's energy once again. However, with Tyrande's patient support, he was able to restrain himself and help his brother find the reclusive demigod Cenarius. Cenarius, who dwelt within the sacred moonglades of the distant Mount Hyjal, agreed to help the Night Elves by finding the ancient dragons and then enlisting their aid. The dragons, led by the great red leviathan Alexstrasza, agreed to send their mighty flights to engage the demons and their infernal masters. Cenarius, calling on the spirits of the enchanted forests, rallied an army of ancient treemen and led them against the Legion in a daring ground assault. As the Night Elves' allies converged upon Azshara's temple and the Well of Eternity, all-out warfare erupted. Despite the strength of their newfound allies, Malfurion and his colleagues realized that the Legion could not be defeated by martial strength alone. As the titanic battle raged around Azshara's capital city, the delusional queen waited in anticipation for Sargeras' arrival. The Lord of the Legion was preparing to pass through the Well of Eternity and enter the ravaged world. As his impossibly huge shadow drew ever closer to the well's surface, Azshara gathered the most powerful of her highborn followers. Only by linking their magics together in one focused spell would they be able to create a gateway large enough for Sargeras to enter. As the battle raged across the burning fields of Kalimdor, a terrible turn of events unfolded. The details of the event have been lost to time, but it is known that Neltharion, the dragon aspect of the earth, went mad during a critical engagement against the Burning Legion. He began to split apart as flame and rage erupted from his dark hide. Renaming himself Deathwing, the burning dragon turned on his brethren and drove the 5 dragonflights from their field of battle. Deathwing's sudden betrayal was so destructive that the 5 dragonflights never truly recovered. Wounded and shocked, Alexstrasza and the other noble dragons were forced to abandon their mortal allies. Malfurion and his companions, now hopelessly outnumbered, barely survived the ensuing onslaught. Malfurion, convinced that the Well of Eternity was the demon's umbilical link to the physical world, insisted that it should be destroyed. His companions, knowing that the well was the source of their immortality and powers, were horrified by the rash notion. Yet Tyrande saw the wisdom of Malfurion's theory, so she convinced Cenarius and their comrades to storm Azshara's temple and find a way to shut the well down for good. The sundering of the world, from 10,000 to about 10,001 years ago. From History of Warcraft. Knowing that the well's destruction would prevent him from ever wielding magic again, Illidan selfishly abandoned the group and set out to warn the Highborn of Malfurion's plan. Due to the insanity brought on by his addiction and the stinging resentment towards his brother's affair with Tyrande, Illidan felt no remorse at betraying Malfurion and siding with Azshara and her ilk. Above all else, Illidan vowed to protect the well's power by any means necessary. Heartbroken by his brother's departure, Malfurion led his companions into the heart of Azshara's temple, yet as they stormed into the main audience chamber, they found the Highborn in the midst of their final dark incantation. The communal spell created an unstable vortex of power within the well's turbulent depths. As Sargeras' ominous shadow drew ever closer to the surface, Malfurion and his allies rushed to attack. Azshara, having received Illidan's warning, was more than prepared for them. Nearly all of Malfurion's followers fell before the Mad Queen's powers. Tyrande, attempting to attack Azshara from behind, was caught off guard by the Queen's highborn guardsmen. Though she vanquished the guardsmen, Tyrande suffered grievous wounds at their hands. When Malfurion saw his love fall, he went into a murderous rage and resolved to end Azshara's life. As the battle raged inside and outside of the temple, Illidan appeared from the shadows near the shores of the Great Well, producing a set of specially crafted vials. Illidan knelt and filled each with the well's shimmering waters. Convinced that the demons would crush the Night Elf civilization, he planned to steal the sacred waters and keep their energies for himself. The ensuing battle between Malfurion and Azshara threw the Highborn's carefully crafted spellwork into chaos. The unstable vortex within the well's depths exploded and ignited a catastrophic chain of events that would sunder the world forever. The massive explosion rocked the temple to its foundations and sent massive quakes ripping through the tortured earth. As the horrific battle between the Legion and the Night Elves' allies raged around and above the ruined capital city, the surging Well of Eternity buckled in upon itself and collapsed. The resultant catastrophic explosion shattered the earth and blotted out the skies. As the aftershocks from the well's implosion rattled the bones of the world, the seas rushed in to fill the gaping wounds left in the earth. Nearly 80% of Kalimdor's landmass had been blasted apart, leaving only a handful of separate continents surrounding the new raging sea. At the center of the new sea, where the Well of Eternity once stood, was a tumultuous storm of tidal fury and chaotic energies. This terrible scar, known as the Maelstrom, would never cease its furious spinning. It would remain a constant reminder of the terrible catastrophe and the utopian era that had been lost forever. Somehow, against all odds, Queen Azshara and her highborn elite managed to survive the ordeal. Tortured and twisted by the powers they had released, Azshara and her followers were dragged down beneath the raging sea by the Will's implosion. Cursed, transformed, they took on new shapes and became the hateful serpentine Naga. Azshara herself expanded with hate and rage, becoming a massive monstrosity, reflecting the wickedness and malice that had always hidden within her core. There, at the bottom of the Maelstrom, the Naga built for themselves a new city, Nazjatar, from which they would rebuild their power. It would take over 10,000 years before the Naga would reveal their existence to the surface world. Mount Hyjal and Illidan's gift from about 10,000 to 9,001 years ago, located in Duskwood, Stormwind City, the Barrens, and Darkshore. The few night elves that survived the horrific explosion rallied together on crudely made rafts and slowly made their way to the only landmass in sight. Somehow, by the grace of Elune, Malfurion, Tyrande, and Cenarius had survived to the Great Sundering. The wary heroes agreed to lead their fellow survivors and establish a new home for their people. As they journeyed in silence, they surveyed the wreckage of their world and realized that their passions had wrought the destruction all around them. Though Sargeras and his legion had been ripped from the world by the Will's destruction, Malfurion and his companions were left to ponder the terrible cost of victory. There were many highborn who did not survive the cataclysm unscathed. They made their way to the shores of the new land along with the other night elves. Though Malfurion mistrusted the highborn's motivations, he was satisfied that they could cause no real mischief without the Will's energies. As the weary mass of night elves landed upon the shores of the new land, they found that the holy mountain, Hyjal, had survived the catastrophe. Seeking to establish a new home for themselves, Malfurion and the night elves climbed the slopes of Hyjal and reached its windswept summit. As they descended into the wooden bowl nestled between the mountain's enormous peaks, they found a small, tranquil lake. To their horror, they found that the lake's waters had been fouled by magic. Illidan, having survived the sundering as well, had reached Hyjal's summit long before Malfurion and the Night Elves. In his mad bid to maintain the flows of magic in the world, Illidan had poured his vials, which contained the precious waters from the Well of Eternity, into the mountain lake. The well's potent energies quickly ignited and coalesced into a new Well of Eternity. The exultant Illidan, believing that the new well was a gift to future generations, was shocked when Malfurion hunted him down. Malfurion explained to his brother that magic was innately chaotic and that its use would inevitably lead to widespread corruption and strife. Still, Illidan refused to relinquish his magical powers. Knowing full well where Illidan's ruthless schemes would eventually lead, Malfurion decided to deal with his power-crazed brother once and for all. With Cenarius' help, Malfurion sealed Illidan within a vast underground barrel prison where he would remain chained and powerless until the end of time. To ensure his brother's containment, Malfurion empowered the young warden, Maiev Shadowsong, to be Illidan's personal jailer. Concerned that destroying the new well might bring about an even greater catastrophe, the Night Elves resolved to leave it be. However, Malfurion declared that they would not practice the arts of magic again. Under Cenarius' watchful eyes, they began to study the ancient arts of druidism that would enable them to heal the ravaged earth and regrow their beloved forests at the base of Mount Hyjal. The World Tree and the Emerald Dream from 9,000 years ago, Stormwind City, Scarlet Monastery, and Darnassus. For many years, the Night Elves worked tirelessly to rebuild what they could of their ancient homeland. Leaving their broken temples and roads to be overgrown, they constructed their new home amidst the verdant trees and shadowed hills at Hyjal's base. In time, the dragons that had survived the Great Sundering came forth from their secret abodes. Alexstrasza the Red, Ysera the Green, and Nosdormu the Bronze descended upon the druids' tranquil glades and surveyed the fruits of the Night Elves' labors. Malfurion, who had become an archdruid of immense power, greeted the mighty dragons and told them about the creation of the new Well of Eternity. The great dragons were alarmed to hear the dark news and speculated that as long as the well remained, the Legion might one day return and assault the world once again. Malfurion and the three dragons made a pact to keep the well safe and ensure that the agents of the Burning Legion would never find their way back into the world. Alexstrasza the Lifebinder placed a single enchanted acorn within the heart of the Well of Eternity. The acorn, activated by the potent magical waters, sprung to life as a colossal tree. The mighty tree's roots grew from the well's waters, and its verdant canopy seemed to scrape the roof of the sky. The immense tree would be an everlasting symbol of the Night Elf's bond with nature, and its life-giving energies would extend out to heal the rest of the world over time. The Night Elves gave their world tree the new name Nordrassil, which meant crown of the heavens in their native tongue. Nosdormu the Timeless placed an enchantment upon the world tree to ensure that as long as the colossal tree stood, the Night Elves would never age or fall prey to sickness or disease. Ysera the Dreamer also placed an enchantment upon the world tree by linking it to her own realm, the ethereal dimension known as the Emerald Dream. The Emerald Dream, a vast, ever-changing spirit world, existed outside the boundaries of the physical world. From the dream, Ysera regulated the ebb and flow of nature and the evolutionary path of the world itself. The Night Elf Druids, including Malfurion himself, were bound to the dream through the world tree. As part of the mystical pact, the Druids agreed to sleep for centuries at a time so that their spirits could roam the infinite paths of Ysera's dreamways. Though the Druids were grieved at the prospect of losing so many years of their lives to hibernation, they selflessly agreed to uphold their bargain with Ysera. Exile of the High Elves, from 7,300 years ago, found in the Barrens, Scholomance, Undercity, and Darnassus. As the centuries passed, the Night Elves' new society grew strong and expanded throughout the budding forest that they came to call Ashenvale. Many of the creatures and species that were abundant before the Great Sundering, such as furbolgs and quillboars, reappeared and flourished in the land. Under the Druids' benevolent leadership, the Night Elves enjoyed an era of unprecedented peace and tranquility under the stars. However, many of the original Highborn survivors grew restless. Like Illidan before them, they fell victim to the withdrawal that came from the loss of the coveted magics. They were tempted to tap the energies of the Well of Eternity and exult in their magical practices. Dathramar, the brash, outspoken leader of the Highborn, began to mock the Druids publicly, calling them cowards for refusing to wield the magic that he said was theirs by right. Malfurion and the Druids dismissed Dathramar's arguments and warned the Highborn that any use of magic would be punishable by death. In an insolent and ill-fated attempt to convince the Druids to rescind their law, Dathramar and his followers unleashed a terrible magical storm upon Ashenvale. The Druids could not bring themselves to put so many of their kin to death, so they decided to exile the reckless Highborn from their lands. Dathramar and his followers, glad to be rid of their conservative cousins at last, boarded a number of specially crafted ships and set sail upon the seas. Though none of them knew what awaited them beyond the waters of the raging maelstrom, they were eager to establish their own homeland where they could practice their coveted magics with impunity. The Highborn, or Quodori, as Ajar had named them in ages past, would eventually set shore upon the eastern land men would call Lordaeron. They planned to build their own magical kingdom, Quothalas, and reject the Night Elves' precepts of moon worship and nocturnal activity. Forever after, they would embrace the sun and be known only as High Elves. The Sentinels and the Long Vigil, from about 7,300 to 6,801 years ago, found in Stringwithorn Vale and Fairless. With the departure of their wayward cousins, the Night Elves turned their attention back to the safekeeping of their enchanted homeland. The Druids, sensing that their time of hibernation was drawing near, prepared to sleep and leave their loved ones and families behind. Tyrande, who had become the High Priestess of Elune, asked her love Malfurion not to leave her for Ysera's Emerald Dream, but Malfurion, honor-bound to enter the changing dreamways, bid the priestess farewell and swore that they would never be apart so long as they held true to their love. Left alone to protect Kalimdor from the dangers of the New World, Tyrande assembled a powerful fighting force from amongst her Night Elf sisters. The fearless, highly trained warrior women who pledged themselves to Kalimdor's defense became known as the Sentinels. Though they preferred to patrol the shadowy forests of Ashenvale on their own, they had many allies upon which they could call in times of urgency. The demigod Cenarius remained nearby in the moonglades of Mount Hyjal. His sons, known as the Keepers of the Grove, kept close watch on the Night Elves and regularly helped the Sentinels maintain peace in the land. Even Cenarius' shy daughters, the Dryads, appeared in the open with increasing frequency. The task of policing Ashnor Vale kept Tyrande busy, but without Malfurion at her side, she knew little joy. As the long centuries passed while the Druids slept, her fears of a second demonic invasion grew. She could not shake the unnerving feeling that the Burning Legion might still be out there, beyond the great dark of the sky, plotting its revenge upon the Night Elves and the world of Azeroth. Wrath of the Soulflare, from about 7,300 to 6,801 years ago. Found in Stranglethorn Vale and Tenaris. The long centuries following the great sundering of the world were difficult ones for the troll race. Famine and terror were commonplace within the Broken Kingdoms. The Gurubashi trolls, driven to desperate ends, sought aid from ancient, mystical forces. Though both of the troll kingdoms shared a central belief in the great pantheon of primitive gods, the Gurubashi fell under the sway of the Darkest One. Hakkar the Soulflayer, a vile, bloodthirsty spirit, heard the trolls' call and decided to aid them. Hakkar gave his secrets of blood to the Gurubashi and helped them extend their civilization across most of Stranglethorn Vale and certain islands of the South Seas. Though he brought them great power, Hakkar wanted more and more for his efforts. The bloodthirsty god demanded souls be sacrificed to him daily. He dreamed of gaining access to the physical world so he could devour the blood of all mortal creatures. In time, the Gurubashi realized what kind of creature they had courted with and turned against him. The strongest tribes rose up against Hakkar and his loyal priests, the Atai. The terrible war that ensued between Hakkar's followers and the rest of the Gurubashi tribes is spoken of only in whispers. The budding empire was shattered by the magic unleashed between the angry god and his rebel children. Just as the battle seemed most hopeless, the trolls succeeded in destroying Hakkar's avatar and banishing him from the world. Even his Atai priests were eventually driven from the capital of Zul'Gurub and forced to survive in the uncharted swamplands to the north. Within those shadowy fens, they built a great temple to their fallen god, Atal Hakkar, where they could continue to do their master's work. The rest of the Gurubashi tribes went their separate ways after the Great Civil War had left their lands in ruins. The Skull Splitter, Bloodscalp, and Darkspirit tribes set off to claim their own lands within the vast jungles of Stranglethorn. Though a fragile peace had settled over the broken empire, some spoke of a prophecy that Hakkar would one day be reborn into the world, and on that day, he would consume it whole. Where with that, we have read many different lore books across the world of Azeroth, which I think is actually kind of a really fun thing to do on this character, since we are a dwarf, and as we know, dwarves have recently changed what they as a society have been focusing on, from mining to archaeology. So we are kind of participating in that archaeology a little bit, where we are learning more about the world around us and the history of the world. Where next episode we should be talking about some stuff related to the dwarves, which is fun. But today, the last little bits of this episode, I want to go ahead and head up into Ironforge Mountain, which we can see right over there, where Ironforge is the capital city for the dwarves and is also home to the gnomes. So I want to go ahead and just do a whole lap around the city, and I'm going to hit up a couple of different locations that I need to go to for a few different things, and we can just have some fun exploring some of the intricacies of the city, because Ironforge is pretty cool, where it is probably one of the most popular cities in all of World of Warcraft, just because of how cool it is as a mountain kingdom where you have to go up the slopes here into the mountain, and then the entirety of the city is pretty much just the interior of this mountain, and there's not too many outside places, so it really hits the dwarven vibes very, very well, where you're in a giant mountain that's been built into with massive hallways that we are about to explore. Where alongside that, it is probably one of the most important cities in the history of World of Warcraft, because when we look at vanilla World of Warcraft, this was the primary city for the Alliance players in vanilla, where Stormwind is kind of what a lot of people would consider as the main Alliance city nowadays, where that was not the case in original 2004 vanilla, and then also in the World of Warcraft classic version of the game, where we see with the Burning Crusade and the Wrathlich King, that kind of shifts over to Shadrath and Stormwind together, and then to Dalaran and Stormwind together, and now in Cataclysm it is just Stormwind. Where for the Horde, it's been pretty much Orgrimmar the entire time. So Ironforge just has a very special piece of World of Warcraft's history with it, where we have an incredible entrance here with this massive steam tank and this giant statue here, who I believe is a statue of the original king before the War of the Three Hammers. And we can go ahead and come through here, and we can just go around the hallway here that we can see is incredibly magnificent and intricate, and we can come through here and get a beautiful shot of one of the biggest parts of Ironforge. And if you take a look at our map, we can see that there is a giant loop around the city, and then in the center is the Great Forge, where we start here in the Commons, which is basically just like, as the name suggests, the Commons area for Ironforge, where it is late at night, and we are playing on the hardcore server, which is not super popular anymore, so there aren't too many players around, but there's actually a decent amount right here. But we have these auctioneers, and this is just the basic auction house, which we can't really do stuff in anymore. And I think nowadays, even in the vanilla version of the game, Stormwind tends to be significantly more popular than Ironforge for whatever reason. But let's go ahead and go across this area here, where we got the Stormpike Guard recruitment officer right here and some Ironforge guards, and we have the Vault of Ironforge, where I can just go ahead and throw some things in here because, you know, I like to collect a few mementos as we go across the game. So I'll just have those 3 things there, and these are 2 quest items, and we have a Vault administrator there, where I think let's go ahead and do a full lap around the city, and then let's go into the Great Forge area. We got one John Turner right there, as well as a human warrior, which is cool because Ironforge and Stormwind City are connected by the Deep Run tram, which I'll probably use that next episode as we're talking about some lore stuff, just to go over to Stormwind so I can do some quests in Westfall and whatnot. But we can come into this area of Ironforge that is known as the military ward, and this is kind of like your big like fighting area, I suppose, where you do have these hot coals right here, which is really interesting because you can take damage if you stand on them. So if you stand on them for too long, you will die, which is a scary thing in hardcore. But if we come into this building, it is really cool because it is known as the Hall of Arms, but in the back here we can see a ton of gnomish and dwarven machinery here, where we see this airplane is about to take off, and we can see that there is an entrance to outside of Ironforge that these airplanes can go out of, where there is also the Ironforge airport that, if I can get into Dun Morogh, that we can see right there as well, which is a really cool area that is only a flyover area. But we can see another airplane coming in through there, and I think if we got a good view, we can see there is a gnome in the pilot seat, which is very fun. But we also got some steam tanks and like random pieces of machinery all around this area, and we have a really cool map right here, which actually not, oh, it's the entrance to Ironforge. We can see right here where there's some tanks and some airplanes and stuff. So we just have like this hunter trainer and this like Stormpike person right here, and this general and this warrior trainer just talking about how to defend Ironforge or something along those lines. But this is a good spot to come to if you are a warrior or a hunter, given the fact that the trainers are here. So you kind of have to come here if you're an Ironforge and want to train. We got Sarah Ballou right here, which for anyone who has watched my Human Mage Let's Play series will know who that character is, because she is part of a cool quest line that we did. But over here is Tinkertown, which is kind of like the biggest area that gnomes reside in the entirety of Azeroth, aside from Dun Morogh, which is controlled by leopard gnomes. But we have High Tinker Mechatork here,
Necessity is the first cousin of invention,
who is a very interesting fellow that has played a little bit of a story here and there across World of Warcraft's history. But we got like a fireworks vendor and alchemist person there, and then we have like the cloth person for the gnomish reputation for Dun Morogh Exiles, and then we have the engineer and trainer, which I'll go ahead and just skip that for now. But a very cool area for kind of what I'm theming this Let's Play series around is the Hall of Explorers, where I am exploring a lot in this Let's Play series, where there are a ton of really cool things around this area. So let's go ahead and just take a quick look, where we have fossilized egg found in the sweltering wastes of the Tenaris Desert. This peculiar egg remains a mystery to modern ecologists. Dating tests suggest the egg could be up to 1,000 years old. Though certain elements denote insectoid structure, its true origins cannot be discerned. The species that lays such distinct eggs still remains to be discovered. Over here we got the Skull of Tyrannosaurus, which I'll go ahead and just kind of open this dialogue, and if you want to read them you can go ahead and just read them there, because this is a lot of reading on top of everything I've done. But we got this cool rock talon right here. Over here we have a Saurial egg, which is very cool looking. And then we got a Giru Strider, which is a very special type of plane strider. And then here we have Tooth Gnasher, which looks to be a massive ram, which was the wonder of Casmodan. And then we can see that there's this massive, I think it's a pterodon skeleton right here. So we can see that. And then in here is a ton of books. This is a really, really cool library with some important quest people that will send you out into the world when you are a higher level. And we have an apprentice watcher right here. Which I seek to chronicle the stories of those that have never known defeat, those that carry within them a soul as strong as iron, undaunted and unbroken from their first steps to their last. Which this is a special high elf character who is present here as a part of Hardcore WoW, where we can remove my self-found restrictions if you want, or what do my stories tell. And then your path is fraught with perils that have claimed countless would-be heroes before you, Soul of Iron, and yet something tells me that you might be different, where we could ask him to relieve me of this burden. And we can see that he wildly flips through the pages of a large tome, where I'm just not going to do any of that. But we have the museum curator right here, and we can see another plaque for the pterodon skeleton right here, which is interesting that there's two plaques. But we got the Highborn Astrolab, and then over here we got the Odoman relics, which Odoman is a very important location in World of Warcraft that is probably going to be playing a part in the future of World of Warcraft's expansions as well. But we got a Horde catapult here, remnants from the Second War, and then I believe this is the last thing right over here where we got the Odoman reliefs, which is very cool. And I think that is everything in the Hall of Explorers. So if you pause to read all of those, hopefully you learned a couple of cool things about this area. But we can go into the Forlorn Cavern, which is a very fun location because it's kind of like the magical area here. And there's some shady stuff going on with warlocks and rogues. And we can see here is a pool of water that you can actually fish in, and there are some rare fish that you can only catch in those waters. But then we can go over to the Mystic Ward, which is the other magical area here in Ironforge, where there's this really cool pool of water right here, which is kind of opposite of the military ward with the fire pit there, but this is just a nice pool. And then if you come into here, we have a ton of different trainers, where we have the priest trainers, the mage trainers, and the paladin trainers, where actually I think I need to learn some stuff from my trainer. So let's go ahead and learn Lay on Hands, which is very nice, Seal of Righteousness, Blessing of Protection, Devotion Aura, and that looks like that is all. Where Lay on Hands will use 100% of our mana, whichever amount of mana we have left, but will instantly heal us all the way to maximum health, which is probably going to be very beneficial for us at some point. But we got a second Devotion Aura there, and then we can get a Blessing of Protection, which is kind of similar to our Divine Protection, and it will just make us invulnerable for a time. But that is the last area on the outer ring here, and let's go ahead and head to the Great Forge, which is the central masterpiece of this entire area. And I really don't want to jinx myself, but we need to be super careful about not falling into the lava here, because if we do, we're dead. That's just the end of the series. So let's stay pretty far away from these guardrails because they aren't very helpful for us. But we can see that this is just a wondrous and incredible area here in Ironforge that is really cool to see and to walk through, and it's just magnificent in general, where we can see all this lava, and in the center here we have a ton of blacksmiths and engineers, and there's a mining trainer nearby. But we got the Great Anvil right here, which is very cool, and this is going to be a frequented spot if we decided to play as a blacksmith, but I'm not planning on doing that. But then we can run into here, which is the throne room, also known as the high seat, where we have this very interesting character here, Deliana, or however you pronounce her name. But we got some Ironforge guards, and we have this royal historian here, and we have Senator Baron Redstone, whom I need to talk to deliver the report, which allows us to complete that quest. And then we have Keen Magni Bronzebeard, the deadliest enemy in Ironforge.
What do you seek within the mountain?
where he has successfully killed one player, so a horde player got in here somehow and died, which is interesting. But just to run around this way really quickly, we can see that the Griffin Master in Ironforge is located right here. So as we unlock some flight paths around this area, we can go ahead and fly to this spot in Ironforge to return to the city if we wanted to. Where I think I'm going to go ahead and head back towards the Commons, where there is a really cool thing between the Commons and the Great Forge, which is basically the same as between the Military Ward, the Mystic Ward, and the Hov Explorers, where there are these big tunnels. We have these two tiny tunnels that will take us back around to the entrance here, where I'm just going to run around here and then we'll pop out right near the bank where we were when we first came into Ironforge. So we have basically explored the entire city, and I think with that I'm going to go ahead and call this episode good there, where I hope you all enjoyed learning about some of the lore of World of Warcraft as we read through those stories, and I hope you enjoyed our adventures in Dun Morogh, where next episode we will be going to a brand new zone, and probably explore a couple of other zones as well that we explored on our human character in depth. But I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Remember, as always, to drink some water, check your posture, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time in the world of Azeroth. Goodbye.